So today we have a very special guest, Erin Scherter. She is joining us from the University of South Carolina. She currently works as the Associate Program Manager for the Behavioral Alliance of South Carolina. She's a licensed psychoeducational specialist, a school psychologist, a yoga instructor, and where I met her is in coaching work with Interconnected Systems Framework, where we look at interconnecting mental health and education systems. And Erin is probably one of the most passionate people I know when it comes to self-care and staff wellness. Whenever we are working together, she's always texting all of us in advance of a meeting, I'm holding a yoga class or I'm doing this for you. Like, of course, yes. And I think Mark signs up for everything. I don't know, or maybe not. Just teasing you, Mark, because I can see you right now. And what I will say about Erin is I've worked with her for about 7 years now. And the first thing I noticed about Erin when I met her, and probably you'll notice as well, is she has this beautiful light about her. And we've had some really uplifting as well as challenging coaching experiences together. And what I continue to observe and appreciate about Erin is not only that light that she brings to the space, but she has this incredible compassion and grace for everyone who enters that space with us. So I really am excited that she was willing to spend her expertise and her light with us this morning. So please welcome me, and join me in welcoming Erin Scherter to facilitate our conversation today.
Thank you so much, Kim. I think that's the kindest introduction I've ever had. I really appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here and be able to share some ideas with all of you, thoughts around using MTSS to support a holistic approach to staff wellness. I'm going to discuss systems and practices that support the holistic approach, but these are practices that are always best practice. Of course, they're a necessity given our current culture and climate of the world. So I'll share some ideas that you can take back to staff, teachers, students, ideas that are always good practice, no matter what we're encountering next year and what we're encountering now. So thank you, Kim. But first, before we get started, let's pause. If I can go backwards, I believe I've lost access, Kim. Let's see, thank you. So let's pause before we get started, before we start talking about stress and educator stress and the things that we deal with every day. Let's all take a second to breathe. If you don't mind joining me and looking past your computer. So thinking first, what's 20 feet? Guess around about how much 20 feet is, and then please look past your computer about 20 feet ahead of you. And once you find something to look at 20 feet ahead, pick an object, probably immovable would be a good idea, and start to think about the physical aspects of that object. Where is it in space? What's the shape of it? What space does it take up? If you were to touch it, what might it feel like? And once you've thought around all the physical aspects of whatever you're looking at 20 feet ahead of you, begin to think about maybe the emotional aspects of it, if there are any. Is there a memory attached to this object, a feeling, a sentiment? And once you've got all of those things wrapped around this object, the physical aspects, the emotional aspects of it, while looking at it, please blink 10 times slowly. And once you're done with your 10th blink, adjust your eyes slowly back to the computer. It's an easy eye strain break with a mindfulness element added to it. They recommend looking away from the computer every 20 minutes to find something 20 feet in front of you, and then blinking 10 times before you look back at the computer. We all know we can't look away from the computer every 20 minutes, but whatever you can, setting realistic expectations for yourself. And then if you like adding a mindfulness element to it, once you find something to look at, what is it? What are the physical aspects of it? And just really focusing on it and then blinking 10 times. It gives us a mindfulness as well as an eye strain break. So thank you all for doing that with me. And I'm going to try to advance the slide and see if it works. Kim, I believe I've lost control. What a unique thought. I've lost control. We all feel that way right now in some form or aspect. So thinking first, let's talk about defining stress. So Patty has put in the link for us here, but it's listed here as well. Defining stress. The term was coined in the early 1930s, remembering that there's different types of stress moving forward. There's the positive stress, maybe planning for a presentation, buying a house, getting married. Then there's also tolerable stress, natural disaster, divorce, possibly loss of a loved one. But we can really get into this toxic stress, which is the third type of stress at this time. Financial, mental health, chronic illness, things that are just constantly there, always in the forefront. And what's important to remember when we're talking about stress is that we don't get to decide what is stressful for someone else. Thinking about families that we've all worked with that maybe have experienced some sort of trauma, and one child in the family is completely reactive to this and showing lots of signs and symptoms of trauma, and then the other sibling appears unaffected, because it's not what happens to us, it's more our response to the event that defines the event, that defines stress or whether or not it is stressful for us. And there's a lot of recent research around naming the emotion. So defining stress, defining the feeling that we have, helps to make the feeling less intense. So if you don't mind to entertain me and type in the chat box, as well as all of you are joining and saying where you're coming from, typing in one word that would define your stress, or one word that would define how you're feeling today. And hopefully it's not stressful, but if it is, or whatever it may be, one word that would define how you're feeling right now. Seeing a lot come in. Weary just popped up. That's one of my favorite ones. Feeling weary, anxious, calm, frustrated. Thank you all for sharing, and continue to share. Defining your one word, what would define how you're feeling right now? Because when we do this, it lets us crack the door to begin opening the calming emotional response. It's just an opening. It doesn't completely take it away or negate the feeling at all, but it gives us a second to crack the door and calming our emotional response. So defining the emotion is the first step in that direction. Please continue typing in. I love that one, hopeful. That's wonderful. And then moving forward, looking at why take the time to take care of ourselves. So if we define stress, we all know we feel it. We all know it's unique to us and exactly how we're feeling right now. Maybe we're feeling hopeful, calm, rested, and that's great. But why do we get there? It's because we've taken the time to take care of ourselves in some form or fashion. We got this visual here because we start talking about self-care, starting with self-care because we use the analogy of we have to put our own oxygen mask on before assisting in the help of others. I have to be able to breathe to be able to be there for other people. We have to be able to take care of ourselves before being there for a classroom full of students. If I myself am not calm or emotionally responsive and ready, I can't be there for a full school, a full staff of teachers, if I'm not taking care of myself as a leader. Because I love this quote from Todd Whitaker. The best thing about being a teacher is that it matters. The hardest thing about being a teacher is that it matters every day. specifically defining educator stress, because this is a unique thing that we're all in right now. There's a compassion satisfaction to being an educator, the positive aspects of a caring profession. It's why we're all here, because we care. We care about each other, we care about our students, our families that we serve. But then there's a negative side of that, the caring too much or cost of caring feeling. And we can get into compassion fatigue, the negative aspects of that caring profession, which can lead to burnout possibly, or secondary or vicarious trauma. And this is secondary or vicarious trauma is a thought that you can just hear about something on the news or hear about something that happened in one of our students' lives and experience secondary trauma. There were some surveys done by MetLife in 2013 and Gallup in 2014 that 51% of teachers reported high stress levels several days per week. 46% of teachers reported higher rates of daily stress. And this was tied at the time with nurses for the second highest stress rate. I wonder where it is now, where we'd be, possibly experiencing burnout or negative feelings. But what can we do? Because our educator challenges are elevated with the current reality. School organization, it varies depending on your district or setting that you're in, the unique job demands, cost of caring associated with our unique job demands, and work resources, or lack thereof in some area. And then we've added to the job description concerns about student safety, possible concerns about lack of food for students, unable to access Wi-Fi, loss of a safety net that is school. And as we practiced before, I think it's so important that we begin to open the door on our emotions, but also open the door to share and listen to one another. If you'd like, also typing in the chat box right now, some things that have been added to your job description, some additional stressors, additional educator challenges that are elevated with the current reality, anything that you feel that's happening now that's unique or that's always been there but is elevated currently. Because once we begin to share, we can start to process our feelings and listen to each other. Defining and labeling the emotions, but also defining and labeling our elevated concerns. So yes, safety concerns are elevated. Homeschooling and family cheerleading responsibilities, virtual remote learning, providing PD virtually, I'm with you. That's one right now. Virtual workflow management, absolutely. Resources, requests to help. We want to help. We want to be there for our students, making sure that everybody's safe. It's tough. And we're going to work on some things today, some strategies to help build compassion resilience, because not only are we stressed as educators in some ways, but then it's elevated with this current reality. And we're going to work together to talk about some strategies. This is an exercise that could easily be taken back to the schools now, to each other, and saying, let's just share, let's get out what's added to this so that we can begin working on it together, because we're going to have to create this roadmap. Creating the roadmap of going back to school. Because wherever you are right now, we're all shifting. We're all shifting in some form or fashion. And the first piece here is to expect trial and plenty of error. Start by being reasonable with yourself. It is in fact impossible to shift to this overnight or e-learning without plenty of trial and definitely error. So expect for it and plan for it. Do your best to make peace with it. This is going to happen. Give yourself time and permission to figure this out. It will take time. We're all going to have to spend more hours than we thought we were going to have to, but setting up our own boundaries around what that might mean and our own reasonable expectations. We'll talk about that as well. But remembering that no human is an island, we're not required to do this alone. And that's why we have these wonderful MTSS teams. We have each other to support and share knowledge and plan. That's why we have these community conversations right now, because we're all working together to create this roadmap. You're not alone. We'll figure this out together. And possibly setting up thoughts around assigning people to reach out to each other, even with students assigning pen pals or check-in buddies, group activities. We could think about small group settings for teachers for opportunities to connect and share as well. Just building in ways so that we can have an environment of togetherness, even though we're physically distant, we're socially together. And remembering that everyone thinks they can't before they can. It's normal to be pessimistic. We all think we can't first. The task is daunting, but we'll all get through this together, leaning on each other's strengths. And the best way to do that is to begin taking a holistic view of our students, because we're all going to have to work together on this roadmap to continue providing education. So thinking about a holistic view of our students. This is an example of a 360 spreadsheet that takes data on the whole child. It could be done through asking students what they want to share, or possibly the getting to know you surveys that teachers naturally do, or other naturally occurring ways where teachers request information from students at the beginning of the year. Could be done now over the summer. Just thinking about students and more than just what they do academically, but who they are as a person, who they are in the school building. What do they bring to the table? What do they want us to know? Because they may have things to share that we are not aware of. And food and drink is always important. That's always an important piece for students. And then if we're taking a holistic view of students, let's also take a holistic view of our teachers. In the same way that we have these naturally occurring data sources to get to know students, we may want to do the same for teachers. This could be done through a survey or a discussion to gather information that gives us a holistic view of our teachers and staff. It could also be the starting point for an initial piece of data to begin building that roadmap based off of areas of need within our building, what we're going back to next year or this summer, where we are, and what do we need? Do we need someone that has strengths in technology or explicit instruction? Are they a leader? Do they enjoy being interactive or teaching social emotional learning? And who can we pull from as we're building this roadmap? It's a great resource. It might be a quick survey or a discussion to ask teachers what they want to share as well, but making sure that we hone in on a holistic view, not just their credentials. Some thoughts around taking a holistic approach to staff as well. So we're trying to build compassion, resilience through the staff culture. Some ideas are encouraging mindfulness, celebrating self-care, highlighting it when we do practice self-care, modeling it, modeling our own setting of boundaries and expectations, communication as leaders and fellow staff, allowing for pauses during the day, working partnerships. And a note on these, thinking of these pauses or working partnerships, what systems could we put in place to support breaks during the day? Possibly a tap in, tap out system, co-teaching, assigning check-in partners, whatever we can do to build in pauses. Maybe it's a reset room, but we have to think about the setting and the system for the reset room that encourages a daily break schedule. What are we doing as a staff culture to set up these opportunities for each other? And then the data piece. This is a thought, an important thought. What data are we using to measure this? Maybe there's a quick temperature check that we could all do even right now. I'm not going to ask you to do it because I'm going to ask you to do something else in a second, but a thought of a temperature check, exactly what we did, defining one feeling, defining your emotions, or maybe give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down or a sideways thumb as to where you're at right now, a scale of 1 to 10, how you're feeling, whatever temperature check to get a pulse on the staff. Lots of teachers do this with students as well. Where are you right now? What is your pulse? What are you functioning at? And just getting a feeling so that we can know where everyone's at, where we are emotionally to move forward. There's also the professional quality of life scale that can be used or used multiple times per year, a culture survey, climate or culture survey that we already have access to depending on your state or district. But using this data and a tiered approach to provide support to those that may need more, thinking of layering on these additional supports where we already have these naturally occurring moments. So I'm going to pause for a second on this slide. It's a lot. It's a lot to think about. And I'm wondering if you don't mind to type in the chat box what thoughts popped up for you on these slides. Maybe some things that you're already doing or thinking to do next year, thinking to do over the summer for staff that you could share for the greater good. Anything, any ideas, any thoughts for building a holistic approach that you may already have, that you may already be doing or planning to do next year that we could all learn from. Please type in, and I'm just going to pause for a second and see what comes up. I love it. A self-care newsletter. That's a really good idea. Yoga after school. That's me. Can I join? Professional development. Yes, absolutely. Reset room, social emotional wellness. A foot massager in the teacher's lounge. I love that. With comfortable chairs. That will encourage you to use it. That's for sure. I love that. Thank you all for typing in. There are many things that are already there. Communication, absolutely. Communication opens the doors for what's working and what we can do moving forward. Sharing with your colleagues an event like this, yes. And that it'll be recorded on YouTube after, so you can check and find it there. Gathering information, asking about strengths, 100%, saying, what can you bring? Maybe we didn't realize that someone in the school was a yoga teacher or a mindfulness coach or whatever it may be that has a desire to share something, conflict resolution. Yes, so much professional development, giving everyone the tools. Participate in pauses. Yeah, especially as leaders in the building, to not only offer the pause, but then participate in the pause and show its importance. Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. And please continue typing the ideas in. I'm just going to move us forward. Thanks, Kim. So thinking next that self-care has many different domains. So this is a nice wheel to look at things and see the different domains across. But I like to think of self-care as one's own well-being, one's own wellness. And I imagine it as whatever self-care is whatever gives you the ability to pause or find space. If you've done something before and you felt like you could pause and after breathe more deeply, that's self-care. For example, I was speaking with an engineering teacher a couple weeks ago, and he shared that his self-care was going out in the woods and being by himself and building something. And that sounded terrible to me. That is not my self-care. I do yoga. That's my self-care, but that's not for everybody either. So we have to remember as MTSS teams, as school teams, as we're thinking about a holistic approach, thinking about the different domains as well. We can offer one that's physical and that's wonderful, but are we checking in these other domains to make sure that other people we're finding a balance on the self-care wheel? Because what works for you may not work for me. And it varies based off of situations or times. So maybe some things that you've done before in your self-care is not helping right now. But the most important thing to remember with this visual is that self-care is not for everyone the same thing. And it's not going to get the massage or going on a vacation or what we typically think of as self-care. It's all these different domains. It's personal, it's professional, it's physical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual. This is a great visual to share with school teams to make sure that we're offering wellness strategies across these different domains, as well as a good visual for teacher, staff, and ourselves to practice. We really want to be in at least two domains practicing so we find some sort of balance. And taking care of yourself, just a quick note, is not selfish. It's not a once a week thing. It's not spontaneous. It's definitely not the same for everyone. And it's not something that other people need and I don't. We have to stop the stigma around self-care of they're leaving work early or I never get to take a lunch and they always take the lunch away from their computer, whatever it may be. It's not selfish when someone is prioritizing their self-care and leaving work on time and turning off the computer at the right time. I'm looking at you, Kim. And turning off the computer when they need to. That is taking care of yourself, and that is prioritizing you. It's responsible. It's small strategies throughout the day. It's scheduled, and it's about what works for you and something that we all do need. It's just going to look different for everyone. So where to start? We have to find our balance. We have to put our own oxygen mask on before assisting in the help of others. And what can we do to find the balance? First of all, eliminating drains. The news is a great example of this right now. Thinking of drains as whatever is an energy vampire, something that just sucks the energy right out of you. And finding ways to diminish that drain. If it's the news, for example, instead finding a trusted source that we can lean into, avoiding the things that build fear, or decreasing the amount of time that we offer to the drains. So maybe I check the news for 5 to 10 minutes per day, and then I don't check it again until the evening or the next day, and structuring it so we're not constantly in this drained feeling. And then minding the gap, because there will be one. There's going to be a gap. At times we're going to overfunction or underfunction. Working from home is unique. Working in the middle of what our culture and climate and world is offering us right now is very unique, and it's very tough. So there's going to be a gap. The most important thing is that we clearly communicate it. When we're not feeling at a 10 or an 8 or 6, maybe we're at a 4 or 5 today, just communicating that gap. State when you're under functioning and what you need. I need to get off the Zoom call right now. No, I'm kidding. But if you're saying, I need to leave right now, I can't be here, it's much kinder to reschedule than it is to show up in a poor mindset or show up when you're experiencing a huge gap. Communicating it and reschedule. And then finding your equilibrium, coming back to homeostasis, some things that help. Getting sleep, and then speaking positively to yourself when you do. So if you're getting that sleep, I'm actually building up my immune system right now because I'm getting the recommended amount of sleep for once. And move your body. It doesn't have to be going for a run or doing something intense, but maybe stretching in your seat or taking some seated twists, standing up, touching your toes, going for a slow walk. Whatever movement you can offer the body helps to stabilize the body and mind. And eating well. It's estimated that 90% of serotonin is created in the gut. So thinking of that positive feeling in the mind, if it's created in our gut, what are we putting in there? Our mood is directly related to what we put in our bodies. Thinking of food as fuel to keep the body going. We can't eat well all the time. If you're anything like me, I just want the sweets and the comfort food right now. But if we're experiencing a gap, eating a healthy meal can help us get back to homeostasis. Just one meal can help us get back. And then if we're thinking about our culture, we want to neutralize the culture of scarcity. These thoughts come from Brené Brown. She's a wonderful emotional therapist, and she says things much better than I do. She's got a way with words, but I'm going to do my best to share what she says. And she discusses how scarcity is a feeling that we have right now, this culture of scarcity. We're comparing our feelings because we're comparing ourselves with each other and ranking our emotions. For example, I can't be angry about the loss of my job because at least my family is safe. Or I shouldn't be uncomfortable right now because at least I have my job. Whatever it may be, we begin to find ways to compare ourselves. And then when we do that, we start to deny our emotions. We suppress our feelings because we're saying, I shouldn't feel this way. I can't be uncomfortable because at least I have this. Whatever it may be, we're suppressing our emotions, and then they start to double down. And they come out in different ways. They come out in shame, frustration, anxiety that we didn't even realize. We're frustrated about things that typically wouldn't spark frustration because we've suppressed our emotions in some way, suppressed our feelings, and we haven't felt them. And then when we do that, we can't show empathy for ourselves or compassion for ourselves, and then we lack it for others as well. So we have to begin to think of this roadmap now moving forward. How can we create a culture of safety to elevate our teams to this culture of safety so that they can show empathy and compassion for each other? Some strategies for promoting this culture of self-care in your school. First of all, starting with self-compassion, offering exercises that express self-compassion. The first way to get started with yourself or sharing with others through professional development or whatever avenue it may be, a newsletter or anything, speaking kindly to yourself. We're all our biggest critics all the time. We've got that little thing in our head where we just beat ourselves up. But why do we do that? Because it's tough. It's hard sometimes to be kind to ourselves. The easiest way to get started is to think, what would a friend, what would a parent, what would my spouse say to me right now in this situation? And then why not say it to yourself? Why not be kind to yourself as well? And then thinking about helping the common humanity is the next piece of self-compassion. As educators, we do this every day. You're always helping the common humanity when we're helping build education. But doing something for others additionally outside of ourselves really builds self-compassion. It could be donating time, resources, or thoughts. Just donating yourself, taking care of yourself is doing something for the common humanity. Expressing gratitude is self-compassion. So thinking of things that we can do to express gratitude, saying thank you, sending a text, writing a letter, builds that self-compassion actually within ourselves. So those are the top three. And then clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And the same way that we communicate what's expected behavior of our students, we have to clearly state our own expectations and boundaries. Consider thinking about a teaching matrix for staff and families that outlines possible clear expectations and boundaries around staff wellness. We're just trying to begin thinking about how to create a culture and a space for these thoughts and practices to occur in our culture in school. And just some thoughts from Dr. Kristen Neff as well on self-compassion. She shares being kind to yourself, of course, is important, but it's the thought past self-esteem. Self-esteem is what we all focused on before. I need to feel good about myself. But feeling good about yourself is different than speaking kindly to yourself. If I feel good about myself, that's great, but it may ebb and flow with the wins and losses of life. Self-compassion, speaking kindly to yourself, allows us to practice a little bit of self-love, even if you're not experiencing all the wins. If you're having some troubling times, we can still show ourselves some compassion. And she speaks about common humanity as well as understanding that we're part of this common humanity. We're not perfect, we're humans, we will make mistakes, but we're all in this together for the greater good. And the last piece she discusses is mindfulness. Tapping into that non-judgmental, receptive mind. We did a mindfulness exercise at the start, and we'll do another one in a second, but allowing us to observe our thoughts and emotions rather than becoming them. Mindfulness can be done through breath work, meditation, visualization, anything that allows us to find focus and peace. And just a quick note on mindfulness, it decreases stress, reduces anxiety, boosts working memory, promotes cognitive flexibility, all of these things that we can do to build empathy and compassion for ourselves and our staff. So what are some thoughts, thinking now, moving forward, that we can prompt mindfulness within the school? Maybe starting meetings with mindfulness exercises, opportunities for meditation or being still before meetings, things like that. And now we're all going to do a breathing exercise together. So if you don't mind to entertain me, if you'd like, you can turn off your computer, the video side, if you don't want anyone to see you. It helps sometimes to not be aware that other people can, but I promise no one's looking because we're all going to close our eyes. So sitting right where you are, allow the eyes to close and put both feet on the floor. Sitting up straight with a tall back. Take a couple shoulder rolls, just rolling the shoulders up towards the ears and down the back. Sitting up tall for the first time today. And then place one hand on the belly and one hand on the heart. Taking a deep breath in, the belly will expand out with the breath. And as you exhale, the belly goes in towards the spine. Inhale, the belly goes out like a balloon. Exhale, the belly draws in. 3 more times on your own. The inhale, the breath goes out. Exhale, the belly draws in. And after your third round of breathing, you can allow the hands to rest in the lap and slowly open your eyes, coming back to the computer. This belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing actually activates the parasympathetic nervous system and prepares the body for rest, relaxation, and restoration. When we breathe in the opposite way, where we inhale and the breath draws in, it's called reverse breathing, and it actually creates feelings of anxiety or restlessness in the body. So I did these before this and it worked. So I promise. Moving forward, just thinking of ways that we can build in some breathing exercises for our staff and students. Strategies for self-care. In the same way that we can change anyone's behavior, the first way we start is to self-assess. What am I already doing? What is my school already doing? What are we already offering within the district? And what should we all be doing more of? What gaps do we have? And then setting realistic expectations and goals. For example, I know when all of this first started, I thought I was going to clean every closet in my house and cook every meal and exercise every day. That was not a realistic expectation. We have to be real with ourselves. Just like with students in the classroom, if we're having a student that's struggling to sit in a chair for 5 minutes, we're not going to ask them to sit in their chair the whole entire day. Instead, we'll start at the 5 minutes. What is a realistic expectation for ourselves and each other, our staff, our district, and start there. And remember to schedule it. Start now scheduling it, because that makes it more likely to happen. And anything becomes a habit when we set up a cue, routine, and then acknowledgement. The cue could be, for example, an alarm or setting out our workout clothes the night before to cue us in the morning to exercise. And then the routine happens. Once we do it for 21 days, it becomes a habit. But sometimes you have to build in a little bit acknowledgement. There's the verbal kindness to ourselves acknowledgement or to others. Sometimes the acknowledgement is natural. If we work out, it feels good. We exercise, we activated endorphins. If it's not natural, setting up external acknowledgements for ourselves or maybe our staff in ways to build in self-care strategies. And very quickly, I'm going to ask all of you to do an exercise. So if you have pen and paper in front of you, please use it. If not, just visualizing this with me. Thinking of your worries. So the top 5 things that keep you up at night, a list of your worries, and writing it down or writing it in your mind. So writing down the list of worries. And once you've got those 3 to 5 that popped in your mind right away of your list of worries, draw a circle, either physically or visually in your mind, around the ones that you can actively control, the worries that are within your control. Drawing a circle around those. And you have one of 2 responses likely to this activity. Either you realize that your worries are not within your control. They're worrisome, but they're not within your circle. Or you noted aspects of your worries that are within your control. So thinking of the things that keep you up at night and what you can do about it. For example, I spoke with a school nurse last week, and she was worried about her own children that were working actively in New York as doctors with many COVID-19 patients, and she was very worried about them. But after this exercise, she shared, but they're not within my circle. They're not within her circle of control, her circle of what we're hoping to move forward in and focusing. Or another example, talking with a behavior specialist, she's worried about the students as they return to school. She's worried about what they can, what they will have experienced within the home. And what she thought about when she did this activity was pieces of that she could control. She could control preparing a resource repository for students that had experienced trauma and prepping a possible toolkit of resources for teachers and staff to get things prepared for when students do come back to schools. But what we're all trying to get at here is begin focusing on what is within the circle. The things outside of the circle, yes, they're there, but if we can focus our attention on the circle and what's within it, we can all work together to focus on what we can control. This is an easy activity as well to take back to staff. Just a visual representation. And thinking of building a community of staff wellness, what are some things we can do for the whole community, our whole school, our whole district? Thinking of school-wide supports for self-care. What are expectations that we can offer our staff around self-care or encourage? Maybe there's a staff wellness manual as well. Could have had one before, bringing it out and revamping it. Starting meetings with a mindfulness exercise. So starting or ending meetings with something that's mindful, different strategies each time, trying things that work for different people, thinking about the domains as well, the wheel of domains, the 6 different areas, and professional development. You all offered that professional development on self-care strategies. What can we do? But the most important piece is scheduling it now, because if we write it on the professional development calendar now, hopefully it'll happen. We can prepare for it in whatever world we encounter next year. But it's all practices that can be taken back to schools to think about begin creating a culture that prioritizes the need for staff wellness. A quick note on ways for leaders to reinforce self-care. Modeling it. Share what works for you in your own self-care journey. Being clear with your own boundaries and expectations, and communicating your gap, because that allows for others to be able to do that as well and feel that it's appropriate. Thinking of allowing others to feel. We could leverage the expertise of staff members with mental health backgrounds, such as counselors, psychologists, and coaches, to help us around the thoughts of active listening, asking questions, and providing descriptive feedback. And then remember that positivity breeds positivity. As leaders in the building, as anyone in the building, the more we express gratitude for one another and acknowledge achievements such as practicing social distancing, showing compassion, prioritizing self-care, and acknowledging our own achievements and expressing that, the more positivity we will breed within ourselves and our schools. And a quick note on a few more things that work for most. Eat well, exercise, get enough sleep, whatever that means for you. Gratitude journaling is a great way to get started as well. Writing down things that we're thankful for. I do the Notes app in my phone because I always have my phone with me. So thinking of things that you're grateful for and writing it down in the moment. Or cueing yourself, setting an alarm, whatever it may be, to shift the thoughts to gratitude. There's breathing exercises. We did one already together, but there's so many out there. The apps that we can use, Calm, Headspace, Mindfulness. I love the daily water one because for once we are all at home and we can all get the recommended amount of water when we're close to the bathroom. So that's an easy one to get started with. And then other mindfulness exercises. There's grounding exercises. The easiest one that we can all share with each other right now is noticing 5 things that you see, 3 things that you feel, and 1 thing that you hear. All we're trying to do with mindfulness is bring us back to the present moment so that we can focus. And then a few additional resources to share with you. The Behavioral Alliance of South Carolina, we offer a Wellness Wednesday at the end of every month. So the Wednesday at the end of the month, we're doing different webinars like this on strategies for wellness. There's also some self-compassion exercises linked here, mindfulness, daily mindfulness practices. And I had to sneak in yoga at your desk because, I mean, that's what we're here for, right? And then some resources and acknowledgments. A lot of this was taken from borrowed from the Midwest PBIS on trauma-informed education, because to be able to be trauma-informed, the most important piece is to start with self-care. And I believe the next piece here would be contact information as well. And I'm going to type my contact information into the chat box as I hand it back over to Kim. So if you'd like to contact me, you may. I'll give you my personal email that's been kind of steady and around for a while. But thanks everyone for being here. And I just hope that you found a little bit of peace and solitude today and some of the ideas and strategies and systems we discussed. Thank you, Kim.